Welcome to The Radio Edit, a podcast about the craft and process of documentary filmmaking. I'm Jesse Kepke, a documentary editor for the past 15 years, and today I'm joined by Jonathan Cipiti. He's an award-winning documentary director who I've had the pleasure of working with and has made some great films. John, I'm really excited to talk with you today about your directing process.
Yeah, man. Thanks so much for having me. No, it's fun to be able to talk and also fun that we've gotten to work on some stuff together too.
Yeah. No, it's been great working, figuring out your working relationship, and then also I'm excited to hear about other projects you've worked on. Just to start off, how did you get into documentaries? It's kind of a unique genre, and I know I kind of stumbled into it. I feel like everybody has their own route into discovering, I like documentaries. Let's do this.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I never wanted to do documentary just because I didn't really know anything about it. So
Yeah.
it was not on my list. I knew I wanted to get into film when I was younger, but I had a really funny opportunity. I knew a few different people who worked in film. I got an opportunity to intern in and around. There was this really cool film festival at the time, and so I was kind of just getting my hands on whatever I could. And the short version is I got a call one day when I get a call from someone and he's like, "Hey, I got your name from this other person I knew. I got your name from them. I saw some of your work, which I didn't have much at that time, and my filmmaker dropped out. I'm going to Peru in 2 weeks. Can you go?"
Wow.
And as you say, yes, yes, I will do that. And it was really funny because I he calls me the next day and he's like, "Hey, are you still good to go?" And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely. I just need to see if I can get time off of class." And he's like, "What do you mean? How old are you?" And I was like, "Well, I'm 19." And he's
Oh,
like,
wow.
"I thought you were 26." And I was like, why? But we it thankfully we went. It was a short documentary on women entrepreneurs in developing countries. So we were outside of Lima, Peru, in just some really cool places, but also some super impoverished places. And I had never been in contexts like that. And I remember we were in a small village. This 80-year-old woman was knitting an alpaca scarf, and I had my camera. And I just remember thinking, like, if this camera wasn't here, this story wouldn't be told. And from that moment, I'm so thankful for that opportunity. Him and I work together to this day. He took a big chance on me, and thankfully, it worked out. But yeah, it just really impacted me of like what happens when you're able to shine a light on true stories. And it was really cool because at that time, people were willing to take more risks, I think, in documentary in terms of like, as long as you were telling the story, people were open to different formats like super shorts or episodic or whatever it might be. And I kind of just got hooked and just met some other people who were in that world. And yeah, really thankful to be swept up in the doc world.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I think that's the fun thing about the genre is you uncover hidden little stories. And then when you get into it, it blows up into its own specific world, but you get to find out about something or someone that you had no idea existed before
Yeah.
you either saw that film or started working on that film.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go into start a documentary, and I think like you edit, you shoot, you direct. So maybe zooming in on as a director, when you go in to start working on a documentary, what's the first step for you?
Hmm. I love the big picture. I think I started, I love process, so I learned how to do everything. Somebody once told me if you want work, learn how to edit because everybody needs stuff edited. And so learning how to edit really impacted the way I thought about story and all of that. And now what's been really cool is like working in documentary. I think what's impacted me most, this sounds like really basic, but it's true, is the proximity you have to people. I think as documentary filmmakers, we have a unique privilege where we get to be in and around people's lives in ways that most people don't. You get to sit and witness, and not just, yes, the normal things, but you're also spending 2 hours at a time sitting down and talking to them about their life and change and impact. And So for me, anytime a documentary either gets brought forward or we begin the process, a huge part for me is making sure I know the people and also the story. Because I think the other side for me, and not just like what we're going to tell in this story, but is the story of the person or subject or group something that I can tell? Because I think I get really excited about cool projects happening, but one thing is there are an infinite amount of projects that can be done. And I think for
Right.
me, one thing that has been really helpful is realizing like you're not supposed to tell every story. And
Mm.
so the first part of it for me is always who's the team around it? What is this story about? Even if I get it and I like it, am I the person to tell it? And then from that point, it just becomes uh, a lot of research and a lot of relationship. And yeah, and we've done certain projects where they've gotten brought forward to us. And I've started down that road and realized like this is an awesome project. I actually think I might know a different filmmaker who might be better
Mm.
to tell this story, which that for me is always really difficult because
Yeah.
you want to do it. And I think that's the other thing though, is like when you're stepping into somebody's life and story, that's a long, heavy commitment. And if it's not a perfect fit, it can be you might not be doing justice to the story of impact that you're telling, you know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I mean, that takes a lot of self-awareness to know, oh, I'm not the best person, or I know somebody who would be. Is that kind of a gut level, like feeling of, I don't know if I'm the right person, or like, what are you looking for? Maybe it's just on a subconscious level on deciding whether this is the right story for you or you're the right director for this.
Yeah, yeah, no, that's a really good question. Part of it's gut, and I think another part of it is like in getting to know I feel like for me, in getting to know the people who the story is about, but also producing partners and whoever that might be, it becomes kind of apparent of like, oh, what's the expectation here? What's the style? And
Mm-hmm.
for me, what's interesting is how in documentary there are so many different kinds of styles. Like how many, what's your approach to doing it? And I feel like over the years you start to develop like, oh, this is the way I like telling story and think
Yeah.
about it usually this amount of characters and all of that. And when there's, it's for me, it's been easier to tell earlier on in terms of like, oh, what's everybody's hope for this? And I think one thing that has been helpful too is so many of the projects I've been able to be a part of are highly relational. So it's like people who have seen work I've done or I've worked with in the past. So when a project comes forward, there's already a bit of a baseline of like, here's like either having been a part of those projects or seeing them, usually there is some level of alignment. But then other times it's kind of like, hey, there's this story of impact and we really want to tell it and it needs to be done in 6 months. And then it's
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
well, there's three other projects going on right now. So a lot of
Right.
times the no's are basic like logistics. But what's cool with creative community is when you know other people, it's easier to hand it off to be like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
even if I'm not the one doing this, I want to champion it and like, be a fan of good work being done.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Being a fan of good work and just a fan of other documentary filmmakers. And it would be great for this is this one person. I
Yeah.
love that. You mentioned earlier editing, learning to edit, played a lot into understanding story. And I know you shoot as well. So when you're going in to direct something, how are like your different skill set or different areas that you've done, in just your career, how are all those kind of playing together and impacting your role as a director?
Yeah. In a lot of ways, I think the first opportunity I got to direct, um, it kind of like it took me by surprise a little bit of how much I enjoyed that sense, especially in documentary, because so much yes, big picture story planning and like that side of things. But I really loved the on the ground side of directing like
Yeah.
how intimate you are life on life with the people you're with and even this isn't always the director that does this but I grew to love the interview process too of realizing so many docs in coming from the editing side, learning how so many docs are made or broken in the interview.
Yeah.
And that became something where everything truly became so integrated of like the way we're thinking about this edit, but also our cinematography and then even the other components of planning, composition, all that kind of stuff made me realize like even if you can do certain parts, like even if you can edit and shoot, in the past it was always like, well, there's the necessity, so you're
Right.
doing it all because you have to. But then realizing like how much better people are than me at editing and cinematography and all that stuff, that kind of opened up my world a little bit, I think, in terms of seeing the beauty of the collaborative side of
Yeah.
documentary. And yet, I think coming from the side of editing and shooting and all that stuff, it's definitely informed a ton on the front end of like I love the tech in film. I love knowing what are the tools that can help us do things better. And I think having a hand in that world a little bit has really helped in the planning process of when we're thinking
Mhm.
about the creative approach to whatever project we might be doing. It's nice to know these are all the options. And if I was gonna shoot it or if I was gonna edit it, all these things, what are the things we'd think about? And then bringing in some of those other people who are, again, much better than I at it. I feel like it at least gives me the rudimentary language to speak to it. I was joking with a composer I've worked with. We're working on our ninth project right now. He's one of the most incredible composers, Grant Fonda. But we were joking because music is one of the few areas I just haven't touched in film. And so we were working on our first project, and I was like, "Can we just like make it like a little more plucky or like I had no language to express it?"
Yeah.
And so even that became something that I love learning like what are the pieces of language you can have to work with other
Mm.
craftspeople to
Yeah.
get something that would be better than you just kind of drumming it up on your own.
Yeah. Yeah. Even knowing like, let's use a close up or can we cut to this shot, 4 frames less or yeah, having
Yeah.
that shared language with the other departments is really helpful.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I know. So the film we've worked on together, The House That Rob Built, was about basketball, college in Montana. And from what I remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like you said you didn't play basketball or wasn't necessarily into sports. How, when you have a film come up and you're like, oh, this is a good story, I'd like to tell this story, but it's about an area that I don't necessarily have a history or knowledge of. How do you tackle a topic like that?
Yeah. Well, yeah, that's actually a generous description. I not only didn't play basketball, I don't watch basketball. I'm like mildly interested in it. But I think it actually helped in a lot of ways because for me, with any story, I really love the learning process because I truly believe everybody, this sounds so cheesy, but I really do believe it. Everybody has a story worth telling, and oftentimes most people just aren't asked. And so
Mm,
for me, I think it's actually helped that film in particular, not having as much of a basketball background, because I had to do a lot of research as somebody who would really like basketball. But I think it also helped of why would someone like me care about this story?
mm.
Because I think that it's funny that it's one of five basketball projects I've worked on, and each time the people are like, "Oh, so did you play?" And I was like, first of all, look at me. Second of all, no, but I think it's helped of what are the human components that would draw
Yeah.
someone in, and then that obviously has to be paired with the idea of those who do know about basketball and care about it need to enjoy it as well. So
Yeah.
my approach really is spending enough time with the subjects in the film to know like what is it about this that drives you?
Yeah.
What is the beauty that you see in basketball? And all of the documentaries I work on are in the impact space. So
Mm,
I'd be a lot less interested in making a documentary about basketball if that was all it was about. But I think
mm,
for that film in particular, what was so interesting was this was about a coach and a team. And the beauty of what happens and coming together. And that just is such an easy metaphor
Yeah.
for all of us, even if we've never played sports. What does it look like to pour into one another's lives? What does it look like to belong to something? And then I think what that allowed it to spill over to do was even if someone has no context of sports, we all have the desire to know and be known. And at a very base level, that's what the film was about. And yeah, so there's always one thing I always like to approach docs with is do as much research and like become an expert as much as you can in whatever subject you're doing. But then when you go in to capture it, approach it like an absolute novice. Like, and that actually helped a lot in the interviews of learning as much as I could, but then going in and saying, teach me about this. Like, teach me as
Yeah.
though I know nothing about this. And ideally and hopefully what the product is that any viewer feels as though they're being welcomed into a world they might not feel like they fit in. And um, yeah, it's a delicate balance though, for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because there's like what I hear you saying is there's the mechanics on the surface of whatever topic it is, basketball or some other topic, and then there's the what's under the surface on like what this means to the person, the analogies or lessons for life that anyone can get from it. And we could get caught up in all the technical, dribbles and fouls and out of bounds and, all the technical stuff. But what is really going to capture people and impact people is what's under the surface.
Yeah, yeah, it's funny. I people like get a little up in arms when I say this sometimes, but like I think in documentary, it's all nonfiction. But I think the information is only like 10% of the puzzle. But the
Yeah.
information needs to be rock solid. Like you can't get your facts wrong. You need it all super, super put together. But then the other 90% is the human component. Like I've
Yeah.
seen a lot of docs that do all human and no information. You're like, well, this is nice, but it's not true. And then you have some that are just all information. And I really think the reason why we watch anything, doc or narrative or whatever, is this idea of human connection. And
Mhm.
so
Wow.
I was talking to someone about that in the impact space and in like a nonprofit piece they were making. And I think it's really important to talk about numbers and this organization or group or person is doing X amount of good, that can be really, really helpful. But if you don't see the people whose lives are being changed, it's so easy to keep those ideas as numbers and not see the people behind it. And
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. That's so good. It's the old adage, people care about people
yeah,
when I hear their stories. So in documentary, most films, I know in my experience, every film I've worked on has some sort of, curveball to it, whether that footage didn't turn out or you lost the footage, God forbid, or somebody decides they don't want to be on camera anymore. Lots of curveballs every film we work on. What's a curveball that comes to mind in a film you've worked on, and how did you respond to that and overcome it?
there's several. I feel like that's the disclaimer in documentary is like you can plan a little bit and then there's always going to be a wrench thrown into it. I think that a big one recently, we're doing it's another basketball project actually, but it's called In the Paint, and it's a story of a coach who started a team in inner city Syracuse for it's like a club basketball team, and a lot of these kids come from really tricky backgrounds. Two of the kids' dads have been in and out of jail. One of the kids' dad, during the course of our filming, actually overdosed and passed away.
Oh,
One of the
wow.
kids' dads was an assistant coach, went missing, and then showed up in rehab 3 months later. And so
Gosh.
this documentary, unlike a lot that we've done in the past, it was this is a story of a team right now, and it's a series, so 6 episodes filmed for 2.5 years. And over the course of that time, our goal was the theme of the whole thing is what happens when you have a radical presence in people's lives.
Mm.
These kids, it's easy to point to like, oh wow, that happened or this happened, but the idea really is we all need community, we all need mentorship. This is not just the kids on the team. This is you and I. Um, but over the course of some of those tragedies that happened, we were filming and had to have calls with the kids at some points and be like, "Hey, are you comfortable if we use this?" And for me, I get so swept up in the big picture. I'm like, impact. This is going to change people's lives, even though it's this circumstance. But I'm thankful to have a really good like team and community around to parse through that of realizing like the end product is one thing, but if you're not honoring the people you're filming with at that time, it doesn't matter. Like it really doesn't matter. And so there was an interview we got with one of the kids who was just going through something pretty rough, and we ended up not using it. And it was really from a story point of view, objectively, it was great. And
Yeah.
then it was one of those things where we, talked about it, thought about it, prayed about it, all this stuff. And it was just, I don't think it's honoring to the story, to the kid, to his situation. Um, and it worked out totally fine. But it's one of those things where for me, it's easy to get blinded by the finished product when in reality, over the course of that project, we spent I mean, hundreds of hours with that team, those kids. And so then to say, well, this, 6 30-minute episodes is more important than the lives that were lived is just like, yeah, it can definitely be a temptation or a danger. And then every time I will say though, there's been a wrench like that, we've never regretted not using it. You know what I mean? And so they're definitely hard decisions though in the moment.
Yeah, yeah. I was just talking with someone recently on LinkedIn, and it was this idea of like we're kind of handed these people's stories and in a sense handed a sliver of their life, and that we're the custodians on how we portray them to the world, how we like take these precious moments and truths that they shared with us. And yeah, we have to make, maybe different than like a Marvel movie or something, have to make these ethical, value-driven choices. Like you're
Yeah.
describing, do we use it? Do we not use it? Because we've been entrusted with this responsibility of telling someone's story well and truthfully.
Yeah, well, and what I'm thankful for is in the types of stories we've been able to tell because it's such a relational process, there's so much trust that has to be built on the front
Mm.
end.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so we've had circumstances on the other side of things where we did an interview and then we'd have a deeper conversation. And through that relationship, they'd be like, you know what? No, I'm okay. I am okay with that. And
Mm.
so I'm really thankful when you're not just telling a story about someone, but you're telling it with someone. And
Yeah.
I think for me, I feel very privileged in the sense that all of the docs that we're able to do are in the impact doc space. So it's usually stories in and around groups of people who are making some sort of change and impact. And that's always messy. There is always really good stuff that happens from that and also really challenging things. So the nature of it, I found on the front end before we ever start rolling at all is is everybody on the same page? Like before any cameras show up, do you know me? Do you know what our intentions are? It's not to just tell an interesting story. It's to shine a light on like the beautiful things that are happening around the world because there are so many of them. And that like one thing I always say in doc, and this is different for a lot of doc storytellers, but for me, I say my job is actually less of telling a story and more of translating. I think
Mm.
feeling entrusted with these stories, for me, I am really honored to be able to go into a situation and for somebody to trust me with that story. And I'm not super interested in being like, here's my perspective on this thing. I am much more interested though in how how does this relate to someone who might have no context for this part of the world or this idea or whatever it might be, to be able to translate that in a way to see, no, you're my neighbor. Even if you're halfway around the world, we have the same hopes, fears, dreams, desires. And I think when we can bring that proximity, it truly, as grandiose as it sounds, it changes the world.
Yeah.
And that is, it's an honor to be a part of that.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that word of proximity because so many of these stories are either halfway around the world or maybe they're down the street, but I'm not even close to it. And yeah, through documentary, we get to bring viewers closer to something. And yeah, that totally changes lives.
Yeah.
I know you just recently, night before we filmed this, debuted a film, Broken Mary, which you've been working on for a while. I'm curious what led with that film to doing kind of a here's our premiere. I'm assuming it was in a theater or like, hey, we're going to premiere this. What kind of on that film led to that choice of here's how we're going to release it? And then kind of a second question to that is the bigger look at like documentary distribution because it's definitely changed over the years and streamers these days are pulling back from buying stuff, and so as a director kind of looking at how am I going to get people to see this, how did Broken Mary get to that point of let's have a premiere for it, and then how do you approach distribution on the films you work on?
Yeah, it's a super good question. It's a big question too. Um, yeah, I think it's interesting because, like I was saying before, I think people, what's really encouraging to me is that people will watch, especially it seems like in completely different formats of documentary, whether it's like a micro doc or a short doc, episodic or feature. And this film, Broken Mary, I actually got approached about it like almost 6 years ago.
Wow.
And originally it started as a feature and it was just, let's tell this story. It's all about beauty from brokenness in the life of this guy, Kevin Matthews. Most stories I do are actually beauty from brokenness. So that's a blanket theme of we're all broken, but there can be beauty. Don't be afraid of the brokenness. And the producing partners on this project were awesome. So ODB Films and Family Theater Productions, and then our company, Windrider, all teamed up. And the whole goal was just how do we get this story made? And the when we did that, we didn't set out to be like, oh, we want to do a Fathom event or theaters or whatever it might be. And then as we continue to go through the process, we just started to realize like there are actually a lot of places for this to live and exist. And when we landed on a feature, we had had some experience with Fathom events in the past, which I think are a pretty cool. They've changed a bit recently too, but it can be a cool way to fuel a bigger marketing campaign. So for us, we partnered with Fathom and did a one night release, and it got into 1,000 theaters through Fathom one night. And so it's a great way to be able to like, if you already have built-in groups who you can leverage to say, let's get people out in theaters, it can be a really great way to get people involved. But one thing we've also found is like there needs to be the next step as well. Because for
Yeah.
me, this is maybe more, producers might have a different answer to this. I feel like as a director, I can just talk in these big, like, it's okay if one person sees it. It's not actually that, like, people need to see it. But for us, it is a little bit less about the amount of people that see it and more about the right people seeing it. And so, as we've thought about this film, Fathom made a lot of sense to create awareness and then point them to where it'll be next. And so,
Mm.
and you and I may have talked about this a bit in the past, but so Windrider, the company that's actually, so John Purdy, who's the CEO of Windrider, he's the one I went to Peru with 13 years ago.
Yeah.
So we still work together and make these films. But in addition to that, we do an event every year at the Sundance Film Festival where we
Yeah.
bring students, professors, thought leaders, artists to a forum at Sundance. We go watch films, bring them back to our space. And it's been really cool because over the years, this will be the 22nd year of Windrider. We've built a network of people who are really interested in using film as a starting place rather than an ending place. So with this film, and all the ones that we're working on now, what's really nice is we have a built-in network of people that we know are actually in our core audience. The whole a huge part of the academic side of it, but then also a lot of like different organizations like Young Life University Crew, people who are really interested to say, how do stories catalyze conversation? Because for us, a large part of what we do is we make films, we also curate them too. So we work with other filmmakers and we'll show films and then we'll also say, what's the conversation that comes out of this, but specifically for the context of the people having it. So we do that event, but we also have, as a part of that, our own platform that these groups and universities, whatever it might be, can take all that content for free and put it into their context. And so um, I think it's been something that's been really cool. It's been built over, a long time, but this specific part of it over the past 10, 13 years or so, to be able to say, rather than everybody having to come to our space, how do we plug into the people who are already doing the good work of trying to talk about important things? And again, in documentary, having the ability to step into those stories and then bring them to others. I think there's the idea of you want to sell a film and get it to as many people as possible. And that's great. But I do think for me, what's been really cool is to be able to plug it into the groups of people who actually want to talk about it and go deeper, even if it's less eyeballs on it. There seems to be a bigger engagement. And yeah, so for us, I'm really thankful that's been something we've been able to build and feed into. And then, like I said, 70% of the content on our platform is not it's stuff we license from other filmmakers who want the same thing. They're like, hey, we made this short that won an Oscar, but we want it to be able to go into these groups and talk
Yeah.
through.
Yeah, that's really cool. I love the question of, how can the film be a starting point and not an end point? Because I think, and, not necessarily 100% across the board, but most documentaries are like awareness or bringing you awareness about a topic or a region or a person or, the woman, female entrepreneurs in Peru and bringing awareness to something. And not that every documentary has to have an activist, outreach at the end, but how can that awareness spark further conversation? It's a really cool way of looking at it.
Yeah, well, and it's been cool too because we did a project 3 years ago in India where we were. It's a really like powerful project. It changed my life, and it was all about essentially this group had turned a old brothel into a school for children who live in the brothels, a place where they could go learn, be safe, clothed, fed, and now they're becoming doctors and lawyers, and it's still in the red light district. But I was telling the people I worked with, what was really powerful for me was you leave India, you go back home, and it I was thinking about India less, but I was thinking about my neighbors more.
Hmm.
It like, and I think that's for me what is so exciting about documentary is it does raise awareness about things that you might not know about, but I really do feel like it gives you the ability to see the world you're living in with fresh eyes, to see it new that
Yeah.
whatever the story is, like we are a part of it. I was talking with someone recently and just saying like I think there's so many things to be pessimistic about in the world. There always have been. But when you get to tell stories of people who are changing the world, it's hard to be pessimistic because you're confronted with the darkest things you've ever seen, and you're confronted with the light of those bringing into the darkness. And so I think that film, not just documentary, but I'm thankful I get to do documentary. My hope is not everybody needs to get involved. Not everybody needs to be a part of every movement, but I think it gives you the ability to no longer say you don't know. At least if you can give people the invitation and a seat at the table to say, you don't need to hear my perspective as a filmmaker. I just want to shine a light on this. what's your perspective? Let's talk about it because yeah, I think it's really about all of us more so than even just the person you're putting a camera on.
Yeah. Wow. Well said. I think that's a fantastic note to end on. What do you have coming up next, and where can people see your films?
Yeah. So we are finishing up. We're finishing out two other projects right now. So Broken Mary was out last night. We're working on that other basketball series I was telling you about and finishing up the last two episodes of that. We're actually contemplating a Fathom event this spring for that. So potentially another premiere, which would be great. And then we're doing another project in India coming up in February,
Nice.
which is about a pastor in the slums of Mumbai. It's a crazy story. So yeah, all of these can be seen in different places, but our platform, Windrider Studios, a lot of a lot of these live there, and it's free. So people want to check it
Awesome.
out. Also, the nice thing is there's a lot of other filmmakers stuff up there too. So yeah, not just mine.
Awesome. All right. Thank you, John, so much for your time. Really appreciate it. There's a few things that you said, I think, that are crucial ways of looking at the work that we do. And thanks so much for sharing. And thank you, everybody, for watching and listening. And we'll see you on the next episode.
Thanks so much for having me, man. It was an honor.